Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at some holiday collections. We have the Dior Backstage holiday collection. I have all three pieces from that collection. That includes the highlighter palette, eyeshadow palette, and the lip maximizer. In addition, I also ended up purchasing all three of the Hourglass palettes as well as the Dragon brush. So we're going to go through all of these items together, and I also have two new brushes from Fude Bobo. These were gifted, and honestly, I always buy duplicates of these because when my kids get older, I want them each to have a set. These are some of my favorites. So there's one more. There are 5 of these Dragon brushes from Koyudo, but I'm missing one still. So I have to get that one. I missed it. I was on vacation when it released, and unfortunately it hasn't restocked yet. But when that comes back, I'm definitely jumping on that. But we'll compare it to the first 2 that launched as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start off with the gift box from Hourglass. And you can purchase a gift box for $5. And I love the dragon theme on here. So I really wanted to get a really nice box just kind of to keep some stuff in. But I have to say, I'm disappointed in this box. For $5, I don't really think this is worth it. We do have a beautiful design, but when I order my boxes from like Chanel and Dior, I mean, I'm not even ordering boxes. When I place an order and I get a box from like Dior, it's a nicer box, and that's complimentary with my order. So for $5, I was expecting something at least as thick as that, but you can see it is going to be thinner cardboard. And I don't like having the flap here. It is a flap that inserts here. So I just feel like the more you use this, you know, that's going to end up ripping. It's kind of a little bit, you can see it's a little bit harder to open there. And my box came dented. So not super thrilled with the $5 option for a box. However, if you are looking for nice gift wrapping packaging, you don't want to wrap a present, this would be a nice alternative to that. But if you're looking for a keepsake box, I wouldn't recommend it for that function. In addition, I also picked up the Dragon brush. So this is the regular Hourglass brush. We see this dual-ended. You can also buy this, the regular version of the brush, in a Dragon brush cup, essentially. So, you know, that's another option here. So when I purchased, the cup was not available, but I picked this up. The design seems to be totally printed on the metal. I don't feel any sort of raised printing on here. It doesn't feel like it's going to rub off. And you can see the design here pretty much goes all the way around. You know, it does. There's no like blank space really. So this is a dual-ended brush. It is synthetic. You can see we have one end that's a little bit smaller. This is great for highlighter in particular or dotting a deeper blush. This larger side here is great for powder. The smaller side though is great for powder under the eye or around the nose. But if you're looking for a larger area or you're working with a lighter blush, you know, I think the larger size is great. So it's a nice versatile brush. So I did pick this one up. All right, so I placed my Hourglass order. I have to say mine really took a long time to come this time. I'm not quite sure why. But when I originally placed my order, I had just purchased the brush and the Dragon palette. And I think it's a beautiful design. Now you can customize. It wasn't on the original page for Hourglass, but there is a separate page if you'd like to customize your case with either the light, medium, or deeper coloring inside. I went with the traditional, so this is going to be your lighter coloring here. Let's go ahead and we're going to swatch these. And then after I place this order, you know, it really got to me because we actually have 5 new shades in each palette. And I was like, I really want to try those. So I ended up placing a second order for the other 2. So the first shade here, this is going to be our finishing powder. And this is going to be the shade Dreamlight. The blush is Peach Fusion. You can see it is going to be a shimmery blush. And there's a bit more of that like brighter orange in there. This third shade here is another finishing powder. This one is Divine Light. So you can see that Dreamlight is a little bit lighter than Divine Light. And Divine Light has a little bit more of like a rosy peach hue to it. Whereas this one here has, the Dreamlight is just a little bit more ivory. So this has a little bit more of like that soft blush hue to it. Next up, we have a blush in Mauve Haze. And you can see it's going to be a soft, dusty rose. This one is going to be a more matte finish. The bronzer here is called Soft Bronze. And then we have a highlighter here, which is going to be Sunlit Strobe Light. So you can see that is definitely going to be a warmer highlight. It's kind of a peachy champagne shade with a little bit more peach than champagne in it. So this is going to be our lighter color story here. And then I ended up picking up the other two palettes as well because I just couldn't resist. So we've got the Evil Eye, and you know, this one here, we have a finishing powder that we're going to start off with. This is going to be the shade Soft Light, and you can see it's going to be a bit deeper than any of those there. And I have to say it's deeper, but with the light hand, it still works on my coloring as a powder. So no complaints there. I actually think this is my favorite of the three color stories. Then we have the highlighter in the Rose Gold Strobe Light, which I really like this one. With the light hand, it gives just a nice soft glint. But you see, it is going to be, I wouldn't really say, to me, it's a little bit warmer than a true rose gold. More peach gold to me. So then we have a blush in, this is going to be Pink Fusion. I really like this blush shade. It's a nice bright pink, medium toned. Then we have a blush in Oasis Glow. And this is a great nude shade blush. And I really like this one. So this one I just think is such a great everyday shade. And it's one of the shades in here that really kind of won me over as this being my favorite. Then we have the Vibrant Coral Blush, which is a beautiful coral shade. So honestly, it's these three blushes here that I absolutely love in this palette. Our bronzer is called Natural Bronze. And you can see it's going to be a little bit deeper than the light one, but it's also slightly cooler in tone than that in the Dragon palette. So I actually prefer this bronzer. Next, we have the Lotus palette. And by the way, just like always, we do have the Metal Compact magnetic closure here. And this is going to be our deepest color story. First shade here is a highlighter in Gilded Strobe Light. And honestly, these highlighters are a bit too deep for me as a highlighter. However, with the soft hand, I can definitely use them more as a shimmery blush. Next, we have this shade here, which is the blush in Desert Flush. And you can see that is going to be a nice dusty peach. Got a little bit of like a nude hue mixed into that. I really like it. And I think it's a little bit, it's a significantly deeper shade than the one in the Evil Eye that is called the Oasis Glow. But they do have kind of a similar vibe. I would say that the Oasis Glow is a little bit more nude, whereas we have a little bit more warmth, a little more peach in the shade in the Lotus, which is the Desert Flush. Now we have a finishing powder. This is the shade Eternal Light. It's definitely too deep for me as a finishing powder. However, it's one I could use as a bronzer. You can see we've got a little bit of a warmer red hue to it. So there's that one. I actually do like that one, you know, kind of as a bronzer for me. But then we have a highlighter. And this is Radiant Rose Strobe Light. And I like this one as a radiant blush for my skin tone. But I like, for a deeper skin tone palette, I like having those two different highlighters in there because they are drastically different. The star for this palette for me is this blush. This is a beautiful blush in Red O, and I absolutely love this. I have it like very, very softly applied on the apples right now. And then last up, we have the bronzer in Bronze Heat. And we are now out of space. So out of the three palettes, I have to say, this bronzer though is actually my favorite because we do have the coolest undertones in here, yet it's still not significantly deeper than that in the medium palette. So it works well for me as a bronzer. I do think it's a little bit lighter as a bronzer for deeper complexions though. So let's go ahead and take a look at some demos for these palettes. And the way that I arranged the demos this time is I wanted to compare product by product instead of just palette by palette. So we start off with a Dragon palette, move into the Evil Eye, and then the Lotus. So we're going light, medium, deep for color stories. But I paired it by category. So we're going to start off with the finishing powders, and then the bronzers, the blushes, then the highlighters. So you can really kind of see how those compare. And when we are switching palettes, you know, I try to have a situation where you can compare that from the light palette with the medium and that from the medium with the deeper tones. So hopefully that is helpful so you can really see the differences between the three palettes. The quality of these, it's going to be the same as what we always have from Hourglass. I think it's a nice quality here. They feel very smooth and easy to apply. I would have to say, like, several years back, I had some holiday palettes from them that weren't as smooth as I feel like the last couple of years have been. So I had actually stopped purchasing them for a while, but I'm really happy with these here. They are made in Italy. We have a 1-year shelf life, and we have 1.4 grams of product in each of the wells. So that's 6 shades at 1.4 grams each. Now, as you can see in these swatches and demos, I did not use the Hourglass brush for these, but it does perform very well with these products. However, I wanted to use some slightly different shapes, so I primarily used brushes from the line called Number 8, which is produced by H, which my thought has always been that that's Koyudo. And you know, I have to say, I really like these. I purchased these from Fude Bobo way back, but I think that these are a really nice, easy brush to use, and they perform well with these products. Now, that particular line does have a variety of different hair types and mixes. The ones that I have in particular are a mix of goat and squirrel. So each palette retails for $90 US. I do have a promo code if you're interested, and that is just the code Lexi. And that will give you 10% off your purchase. Keep in mind though, that will only work one time with your email address. So if you want to reuse that code, you'll have to use a different email address. So just something to note there, but every little bit helps. So the brush retails for $52 US, and I purchased that in the Dragon design, but you can also pick this one up in the Evil Eye design. So those two have, brush designs there. And there are a variety of different little like kits. For example, the Phantom glosses. I personally really love those glossy sticks. There is a duo of those. And then we do have, an essential brush trio that includes the dual-ended brush in gold, just solid gold instead of the Dragon design, but you can get that with the Dragon, brush container or with the Evil Eye set. And just something to note, that container is supposed to be made out of tin. So I think that container would have definitely been a better option than the box that I purchased. However, it retails for $150 instead of $5. So just something to note there, but I'm happy to see that it is not a cardboard canister. Now, as we're looking at the demos for all of these shades here, I do want to note the shades that are considered not new. And in the Dragon palette, the one shade that is not new is actually that first finishing powder, which is Dreamlight. And that's described as a cool pearl with soft lavender sheen. But I have to say, I did not have this one, and I'm not really sure what product that has been in the past. I have not seen that. But all the other 5 shades in there are going to be new shades, and I'm really happy with them. And in the Evil Eye palette, the returning shade is the powder in Soft Light, which is described as a pale peach. And then likewise in the Lotus palette, the deepest color story, we have the finishing powder in Eternal Light, which is described as a golden amber, and that is the returning shade. So finishing powders are repeats, but all blushes and highlighters and bronzers are all new shades. And I have to say, I didn't have any of the returning shades anyway, so they were all new shades to me in all 3 of the palettes. I'm really happy that I purchased all 3 of them. Now, a few notes, the packaging is made out of 100% tin, so that reduces the use of virgin plastic in there and, makes it a little bit more environmentally friendly. Now, according to Hourglass, they do use photoluminescent technology, which is where they're using micron-sized color-correcting particles that capture, diffuse, and soften surrounding light to refine the skin's appearance. Each individual powder is hand mixed to create the perfect blend of pigment and light to provide a natural flush and radiant glow. And because of that, sometimes your swirly shades are going to have, you know, predominantly more of one shade than another. So just something to note, but I feel like mine are all pretty balanced. I'm quite happy with them. All of these products are vegan and cruelty-free, and 5% of the net products from all of these unlocked items are going to support the Non-Human Rights Project. So I hope that was helpful to see all of those shades together. Overall, I have to say I really do like all three of these palettes. This one here is going to be our Dragon, or our lightest color story. Then we move into the medium tone palette, which is the Evil Eye. And then here we have our Lotus palette, which is the deepest color story. So one more time, just as close as we can get it, so you can see all of the shades. And you know, there's something I love most from each of the palettes, and I really hope sometime in the future Hourglass makes these truly customizable, where we can actually pick what we want in each of the pans and, you know, kind of design our own palettes. And I feel like, you know, that would not decrease sales. I feel like that would actually increase sales. I personally would love to have all the blushes in one palette and have the liberty to mix and match, like if I were traveling or something, and, you know, pick and choose which particular items I would like to most carry with me. And I think if they continue doing beautiful, you know, packaging, this is definitely something, you know, people are going to want to collect these. So even if it's just an empty palette, people would still want to collect it. So I do hope they consider going even further into the customizable options in the future. By the way, all of the artwork on these palettes was done by artist Katie Scott, and I think she did a great job. Personally, my favorite is the dragon, but I love dragons. I love fantasy. So let's go ahead and we're going to move on to our Dior Backstage collection. So since we've been talking about highlighters, let's go ahead and continue that conversation with the new Dior Backstage palette for the holidays. This is number 6, Celestial Glow, and it is limited edition. Now, I don't have any of the previous palettes for this any longer. This first shade here is basically a pure white glitter. I mean, look at that. It's very shimmery. We do have, it's primarily like a whitish silver hue, mostly like a really bright white, but there is a tiny little bit of golden reflect in there as well to warm it up. But I think this is a really beautiful glittery shade. If you're looking for something more subtle, the peach and the pink. So by the way, the white is called, it's a glitter, and the peach and the pink are going to be a little more subtle. So this is going to be a strobe shade, and this is going to be coral. And you can see is definitely much more subtle. It is a very soft, peachy metallic hue. It does not have chunks of glitter in there. There is very finely milled shimmer particles in there, but nothing as large as the glitter shades here. And then the rose is actually a blush. You could use this as a blush or as a highlighter. And it's really beautiful as a blush, in my opinion, for, you know, a luminizing blush. But you can see this is going to be softly metallic. It's going to be slightly cooler pink here. Our peach has like a little, it's got like a translucency to the base, making it a little bit brighter, true peach. And the pink, the rose shade, has the same thing. The very special shade though is this one. This is another glitter, but this is the shade Icy Blue. And this actually, it doesn't look super blue. Actually, when I picked it up, I was like, oh, this looks more like a silver. But look at that. You have a rainbow pearlescence to this. It's not going to be as large and chunky as the white glitter. It's much more finely milled. We do have glitter particles in here, but you can specifically see blue and pink in there as you're shifting. And I think that one actually, you can put on a little bit and make it very subtle, because depending on the way, let's look at the swatches while we talk about it, but depending on the way you apply it, you know, every time you turn, parts of that are going to kind of blend in and make it a little more subtle. You can also pile it on and really get some of that iridescence. But I would say it's definitely, you know, it's more intense if you pile that one on than the peach or the rose. However, definitely still not as intense as the white glitter. I would say in terms of subtlety, we definitely have the coral first. The rose is going to be even more metallic than that. Then we go to the icy blue, and then the white glitter, which is definitely gleaming. So for all of the highlighter swatches, I'm using the Sonia Worker L, which I think is such a great smaller brush, but I wanted to go back in and add additional layers as you're seeing these swatches, so you can really see a larger area swatched. And I think, you know, all of the shades have something for them. I personally am very happy with this palette. I'm glad I picked this one up. And I think that it's really the icy blue shade in here that makes this one special. Now, just a few product details. Again, this is from the Backstage line. It's a limited edition. We have 10 grams of product, a 1-year shelf life, and it's made in Italy. So let's take a look at the swatches one more time. And again, all 4 of these shades are included in the palette. These first and last shades are going to be glitter shades, but you can see that the white definitely has larger chunks. Then we have a coral strobe and a rose blush, and those are both going to have a bit more of a metallic vibe to them with it's more finely milled shimmer in there. But all 4 of the shades do have glitter to some extent. So overall, I'm very happy with this palette. I think is beautiful, and actually it complements the Hourglass ones very nicely. So we'll take a look at today's look in a few minutes. Let's go ahead and move on to the eyeshadows. So the new Backstage eyeshadow palette, I have to say, I love this. As soon as I saw this, I knew I had to have this palette. I love last year's Silver Essentials, and just something to note, that sold out so fast. This one, you know, supposedly there's not a lot of stock of the Backstage items. We should still see it at some other retailers, but I would expect this one to sell out pretty quickly as well, just like Silver Essentials last year. And it is limited edition. So let's go ahead and swatch these. Our first shade here is called, this is a Satin Pearl shade. And I have to say, this one I do find to be a little bit more powdery than some of the others, but I think it's a really nice ivory shade. Then our next shade here is a Satin Coral, and we'll actually swatch the highlighters with these because some of them really complement each other well, but that's a very nice soft peach. It's really more peach than coral. Then we have a Satin Bronze, and I think this is a beautiful bronze, but it's definitely more of like an aged bronze. We've got more brown in there, kind of more of like a deeper brown mixed with a little copper. Then this shade here is going to be a beautiful lilac shimmer. I mean, look at this. Absolutely love that shade. It's very soft. You can build these up. The shade in the middle, this is going to be a pink shimmer. It's really more of like a soft berry fuchsia. And so we do have some of those blue tones in there. And then we have a Satin Plum. And notice it's really more of like a satin matte. There's just a little bit of that satin hue when you kind of build that up, but if you put that on lightly, it really just appears to be a matte shade. And then we have a Satin Silver, and you can see this is definitely much more metallic here. And this shade here is a special shade. So when I first got this and touched this, you can see you don't get up as much product. It's a little bit more firmly pressed, but not one of those ones that it's like hard pan. It's more like there's a little more gel or something in the formula. But this reminds me of the Icy Blue in the highlighter. And this is Icy Blue in the shimmer formula. And then our last shade here is a Deep Blue Velvet. So this, again, appears to be matte, but if you do layer this up and you kind of go over that a few times, you get a little bit more of a satin finish to it, but more subtle even than the plum. Let's take a look at the eye swatches and talk a little bit about this. So this palette has 10 grams of product. We have a 6-month shelf life, and it's made in France. And I have to say, I absolutely love the color story here. I think we have stunning colors. I really love these. I feel like if you have purchased any of the Backstage palettes in the last couple of years, the quality is about the same as those. So I would say a while back, for me, I stopped buying Backstage palettes because they were just kind of more powdery and dry. But I feel like the last few years, they've been a little bit less powdery. They are still going to be a more powdery product in general than those in the Rouge Dior line with the black packaging and so forth. But, you know, those are really hit or miss. And I feel like the Backstage ones are pretty consistent. I think that this is a very beautiful palette. It's really easy to work with. You know, they are a little bit more powdery, so you can get some fallout if you don't tap off your brush properly. I love the way these blend together and the shades in here. We definitely have some cooler tones in here, but we also have shades in here that have a little bit of warmth, like the bronze shade and the coral shade. So we do have something to sort of balance that out so it's not overly cool, but this is going to be primarily a cool tone palette. And we have some shades that really dip into that cool part of the spectrum and others that stay a little bit closer to neutral, with just a couple in the warmer area. So if you don't like cool tone shadows, this palette's not going to be for you. But if you do love them, I feel like this has a really great balance, and yet it's not going to be all grays and blacks that we see commonly with cooler tone palettes. I really love the color story of this palette. I think the palette is great. I think, you know, again, we've got some consistent, easy to work with shadows. They're not necessarily the most luxe formulas. You know, we don't have any sort of, you know, gel cream type formulas mixed in here. They're more of a traditional powder, but they're easy to use. They're dependable. We've got a great color story. And again, though, I do want to stress that this palette is limited edition. So if you're interested, don't wait too long. I do still expect to see it pop up, hopefully at other retailers like Sephora. Silver Essentials did last year, so I'm hoping that will be the case with this year's as well. But I will leave the links down below for anywhere I can find it in the description box. So hopefully these eye swatches have been helpful. Let's take a look at a few comparisons here. So again, this is our Celestial Purple palette, and I wanted to take a quick look at the shades from the highlighting palette. And let's start off with the Icy Blue. And we're going to put that right next to the Icy Blue from the eyeshadow. And you can see the eyeshadow is more blue, and the highlighter shade has a little bit more pink to it. It's a little bit whiter in general, but they are going to be similar. And then the coral shade really made me think a lot of the coral in the eyeshadow, and you can see they're going to be similar, but we have a little bit more brightness in the base for the highlighter compared to the eyeshadow, which is slightly more muted, but they're going to be very, very close. Now, as for the pink blush shade, we'll go ahead and put that there, but you can see that this is going to be a warmer pink and more strongly metallic. And the white glitter, I mean, this really doesn't go, but let's go ahead and put that right up there. So you can see how the highlighting palette compares to the eyeshadow palette. Now, the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this palette was actually this one here from Gucci, which I personally love because I love this color story. This is the Gorgeous Flora palette with this packaging, but the packaging's not great. And yeah, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to compare a few of these shades. So actually, let's start off with this matte peach here. And then here's our light blue, and you can see that's going to be more of a sky blue. We have kind of this deeper purpley blue here, which is not going to be in the Dior palette. And then I also wanted to take a look at this deep plum shade from the Gucci. You can see they are similar, but this is going to be a little bit deeper, a little bit more blue based. And yeah, that's really going to be it. We have this like champagne shade. I'll put that here, but it's going to be more soft pink champagne. So the Gucci is actually not as close as I thought. I also wanted to take a look at the Silver Essentials from last year. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and swatch all of these down here at the bottom so we can kind of see how the palette stacks up in general. And we do have some shades that are similar, like this silver and the silver here. You can see that this silver here has a little bit more, it's got a little more gray in it, whereas this one has more of a lighter blue. And then we have kind of this deeper charcoal gray. I switched these two by mistake. A deeper charcoal gray and then more of a glittery matte black. We have a light pink, a soft lavender, which is very different, more blue based than the lavender in this year's palette. And then we have a deeper eggplant purple. So that's the Silver Essentials. So I would have to say they're pretty different. And then I wanted to take a look at just the purple shades from the new, this is the Divination palette from Chanel. And I'll just put those right there next to the purple in the Dior. And you can see, by the way, the Chanel are matte, but you can see that they are going to be more blue based in general. Now, I did forget, I wanted to make one comparison with the highlighter palette with the Chanel Lumiere de l'Océan highlighter, which has kind of that same iridescence. So I'll put that right here. So this is the Chanel. This is the highlighter from Dior. This is the eyeshadow from Dior. So you can see it's actually closer to the eyeshadow in intensity. We do have larger glitter chunks in the Chanel. And we have a bit more of a pink reflect. The reflect is stronger in the Chanel than in the Dior for the highlighter and for the eyeshadow. Next, let's take a look at the lip maximizer. So this is kind of like a dusty lavender, but it's going to be pretty much clear. We'll put these on my hand here. I'm going to put this one kind of horizontally. And you can see it's pretty translucent, but it does have a little bit of like this dusty purple kind of vibe to it. And there is going to be some rainbow shimmer to it. So this is going to be number 72. And I think it's a really beautiful shade. Let's take a look at the lip swatches. Right now, I'm wearing the lip maximizer on top of one of the Sephora collection lip pencils called Bellflower. It's kind of this beautiful, like, a little bit of a lilac hued pink, and I absolutely love it. But, you know, I think it goes very nicely with this gloss. If you haven't used Dior maximizers, they do have a little bit of a minty feel and scent to them. They are going to be a plumping gloss. We have 6 milliliters of product, and these are going to be made in France. And I have to say, I do really like them. They're not really sticky. They have a little bit of stickiness to them, but nothing major. And I love how they're in that square packaging so they don't roll off my desk. So overall, I'm very happy with this maximizer. Anything with a hint of purple I think is gorgeous. This does have a little bit more of like that dusty purple, so it kind of tones things down, cools it off just a smidge, but honestly, it's going to be pretty much clear. So you're not going to see a huge difference. Let's look at just a couple of comparisons. First one I want to look at is this shade here. So this one came out just, you know, several months ago with, this is 63. This is the pale lilac shade. And you can see this is going to have a little bit more color to it, more of a pink lilac, which is the name of it. But you can see that this one does not have any glitter to it. So I want to show you how different those are. And then the one that does have similar sparkle is actually this one, which is number 27. And this is going to be clear with kind of like a rainbow sparkle here. And let's just make another swatch there. You can see we get a little bit of that pink iridescence on there. And yeah, it's a bit more intense with the rainbow chromatics than the other one. You can see when it piles up, we actually have a little bit more of a milky pink shade, which you can kind of see through here, but it's really kind of like a very soft pale pink opalescent shade compared to a glittery dusky purple. But again, this new shade, pretty much, you're not going to see much of a color on there, but I love it anyway. So I hope that was helpful. One more time, this is the new shade going across, and this is number 72. This is number 63, pink lilac, and this is going to be 27, which is like an opalescent white shade. And I think they're a great product. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the brushes that I've used along with today's look. So let's start off with today's look, and you can see that, you know, I've already shown you the eyeshadows with the eye swatches, but for the face, I used the powder in Dreamlight from Hourglass in the Dragon palette. And I have to say, I really like that one. I don't really notice much of a lavender sheen, which is in the description for the color, but I think it's a really gorgeous powder, and I've been enjoying that one. Now, the brush that I'm using with that is going to be one of these Koyudo Yoshiki Dragon brushes. And I have to say, I love these brushes. There are now 5 brushes in the collection. I have 4 of them. These 2 were gifted to me. And, you know, I can't wait to pick up the 5th one. I was on vacation, unfortunately, when it released and I missed it. But I definitely plan on getting that. It's more of a soft buffing brush. So really can't wait to try that one when it restocks. Now, I do want to note that these brushes have been very popular, and because of that, they might continue, you know, in like the next year or so forth. So they might return. However, they will probably not return with the dragon handle. So they'll probably have more traditional packaging there if they do come back. So if you're interested in the dragon design, which by the way is engraved in the wood, so it's not some sort of like overspray or painting on there. It's not even just softly etched. It's truly engraved. You can feel it. It's not going to wear away. So I think it's a really great brush, but if you love that dragon design, I would definitely try to fit them in the budget for this year before there's a chance of that design not being reproduced. So the brush that I use with the face powder is going to be the large cheek brush. It's going to have a flat paddle shape, but we do have a gradation on both ends of it. So we do have, a little bit of that 3D shape. It's not just a flat paddle, in my opinion. I think it's a really beautiful brush and very nicely designed because, by the way, it is blue fox hair. So because of the way this works, it's not going to be super light and airy. It's incredibly soft and gentle on the skin, but this shape and the softness of the hairs really allow it to act, more like you're softly pressing something onto the skin. And the bristles really kind of stay together well instead of, introducing air and becoming like fluffy. So I think this is a great brush. For me, I personally love this for powder, particularly pressed powders. And the shape of it does angle enough at the tip that you can go under the eye and go into smaller areas. But I think it's a really great brush. For the blushes, I used the 3D cheek brush, which is actually, it's fairly large. This is a 3D face brush. It's actually fantastic for bronzer. This is the shape. I personally love these angled brushes for bronzers, but I love them for bronzer, blush, and you can even use the tip for highlight. So I think it's just a really versatile brush. So I really love this one, and it's incredibly soft. And again, because the fibers for the blue fox hair, they really kind of stick together. They don't really introduce a lot of air while you're using it. Because of that, you can really be a little bit more precise with placement than you would with a brush made of, for example, Psycho goat hair with the exact same shape and dimensions. So just something to note there. I think these brushes in general are great if you have sensitive skin or if you have dry skin where you have to worry about, perhaps, flaking and so forth. So I think these brushes are really incredible. I personally absolutely love these, and these two were gifted to me, but I always purchase a second of these dragon brushes because my daughters and I love dragons, and I know these are going to be keepsakes that I want to give to them when they're older. So I am trying to get 2 of each of the brushes in this series so that I will have a set for each of them when they are obviously mature enough to handle that. So I just think it's a really special brush. I personally absolutely love these. So let's just take a quick look at the brushes, and we'll look at the first 2 that came out in this collection as well. So let's start off with those. The very first 2 that came out, we actually have a round powder brush and a round cheek brush. And I use these all the time. So this is great for blush. But honestly, I use this powder brush for blush as well, but for lighter, softer blushes where I want just a soft sweep. So you can see they're going to be the same shape, but we have a large and a small. And I mean, look at the stunning design. We have the Koyudo monochrome gradient that we've seen on some of their other brushes, but we do have the special golden dragon etched in there for Year of the Dragon. So I absolutely love those. The brush that I used today for the blush products, this is our 3D angled brush, our face brush. And I mean, just look at how that flows and how it fits. I think is such a beautiful shape. And honestly, you really can't get brushes softer than these. They're so incredible. And then this is the face brush, which again, I think is great for pressed powders in particular. We do have a longer paddle shape, but you can see that it's really great for pressing things and like a gentle sweep, but we're not getting a lot of air or fluffiness in this. This is washed, it's already bloomed. There's not a major blooming effect with this brush. And I just wanted to do a quick comparison here. This is the 3D face brush. This is the Koyudo F04, which is one of my go-to bronzer brushes. You can see that the Koyudo is going to be larger. This is also very soft. This is also Fox. This is Silver Fox instead of Blue Fox. But you can see that, you know, they are going to behave similarly, but this is a larger version. So I hope that was helpful. Overall, everything we featured here today, I'm really happy with everything I purchased aside from that box. Actually, I think the box was a waste of money. But again, I do think it's worth it if, you know, you're giving a gift and that is in place of gift wrapping. But for my purposes of having a decorative box to store things in and continually use, it wasn't worth it for that. I love the dragon design on the Hourglass brush. I think it's really beautiful, but my heart does belong to natural hair brushes, so I particularly love the ones from the Koyudo Yoshiki Dragon series here. And again, these two were gifted. I absolutely love them. I would say though, between the two, it's definitely going to be the angled face brush. That's my favorite because it's so versatile for bronzer, blush, even highlighter. You could use it for face powder. It's really just such a great brush and so soft, and you know, yeah, it's fantastic. So it's hard to say, it's hard to rank all four of the brushes that I have from them, but you know, I would probably go with like maybe the small cheek brush and this, if I had to pick two, as my two favorites, followed by the round powder brush and then the paddle shape brush. But I really can't wait to try that buffing brush. And when that restocks, I'm definitely picking that up. So as for the Dior Backstage, I love this year's Backstage collection. You know, in years past, Backstage has been something I just kind of skip over. I haven't, you know, the formulas are not necessarily anything special. And the color stories haven't always called to me. But last year and this year, they've actually, the eyeshadow palettes the last few years, because we had that green one, then the Silver Essentials, and then this one. Those have all been ones I've really enjoyed. And this year, even the holiday palette for the highlighters, you know, really drew me in. And I think there's just something special in there if you love cooler tones like I do. And even the gloss is just such a great gloss to top things off with. So I'm really happy with everything here today. I'd love to know if you picked any of these up or what your thoughts are on these items. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I really appreciate you spending your time here with me. So I'll see you very soon.